Displaying the list of user accounts is going to be rather easy. We have a lot of the things that we need to get this done. We just need to create a few extra things, put everything together, and then everything is going to work. And of course, we will add a few extra things later on, like the ability to follow and unfollow users. But before we get into that, I want to show you a few changes that I made to the user repository and the user service. I'll start with the iUser repository interface. I added a definition for a new all method. It has a Boolean value called include profile. This is so that we can load the user and the profile up front. We don't have to do that using lazy loading. This is much more efficient if we know that we need that information. And in order to display the user accounts, we need that information. So looking at the implementation of this method, we first of all check include profile. If it's true, then we simply include the profile and return it as queryable. Otherwise, we just call all and let that be it. The user service basically just consumes that API and it returns it as enumerable. Now, if I were doing something like this in the real world, I don't know if I would use Boolean values, primarily because with the users, we have a lot of things that we could include. We have the profile, we have ribbits, we have followers, and we have the followings. Those are 4 things. And so we would have 4 parameters that we would have to pass values to. Or we wouldn't have to, we can make them optional, but still, I'm not crazy about that type of API. Instead, I would probably use enum flags so that I could specify that, okay, I want to include the profiles and the ribbits and the followers and no followings. The API is a little bit clearer in that case. Even though the syntax involves bitwise operators, I just like it better. But we don't have to worry about that in this lesson, so let's move on. Let's go to the home controller, and we want to modify our profiles method. This is going to be very simple. All we need to do is retrieve the users. So we are going to use our users service and then the all method, and we do want the profiles, so we will pass true there. And then we will simply return the view passing in those users. So let's create this view. Right click on the method, choose add view. This is a strongly typed view. The type is IEnumerable of user. It is not a partial view, so we can go ahead and add it. And instead of this H2 element, we want the left panel section. So section left panel. And inside of this section, we simply want to loop over our model. So for each var user in model, and then we are going to use a partial view. So HTML partial, let's call this underscore user profile partial. And then we will pass in the user as the model. I don't think we'll use this partial anywhere other than the home controller, so we can just add it to our home folder. And if we need to change that, we can. It's not like this is set in stone. The model class is of type user, and this is a partial view. The markup for this is almost the exact same as our ribbit partial. We have the div element with the class of ribbit wrapper. So I'll copy this HTML and I'll paste it into our profile partial. We still want the gravatar, but since our model is a user, we don't need this author property. We don't need it for displaying the name as well, or the username for that matter. We don't need anything in this span element with a class of time, so we can get rid of that. And then we want to display the bio. But of course, we don't have anything for the bio yet, so that's just going to be blank. And while we're here, we can go ahead and add a link for the name so that if we clicked on the name, it would take us to that person's profile. Of course, we haven't set that up yet, but at least this link will be there for whenever we do get that set up. So let's use the route link method. The text of this link is going to be the name of this user. We want to use the route of users default. I think that's the name. Let's check. So let's go to our route config and let's look for the users default. It's user default. I'm glad I checked because that would not work. So user default, and then let's pass an object for the route values. The controller is user, the username is model.username, and the action is index. Something else that we want to add here is the ability to follow and unfollow a user. So we can put that placeholder text after the username is displayed. So let's do a follow, unfollow. So now let's run our application and let's see if this works. After logging in, click on the Profiles link, and we see our profile list. It's a short list, but it's a list nonetheless. Let's hover over the name to make sure that the link was generated correctly. It is, and if we click on it, we get our not implemented exception for the list for J.W. McPeak. So the link to our profile works, and really, this profiles should work if we are logged out. So let's log out. And we need to add the anti-forgery token to our logout. So we can't log out until that's done. Let's go to our layout page and let's add anti-forgery. But now that we stopped our application, whenever we run it again, we are logged out, so we can just go to profiles. We're not doing anything that requires us to be logged in. So we can just do profiles and we see our profile list. Although we do want to only show follow and unfollow for those users who are logged in. So we will need to take that into account when we add the ability to follow and unfollow in the next lesson.